hello to everyone listening live and on YouTube. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with you at this series of COVID talks and to tell our international audience about an archaeological site that's been drawing NAS members back continuously for the last 3 years. Here's a typical view of how I often see Sandwich Flats in Kent. It's gorgeous, isn't it? As many of you may know, the best time to do archaeology intertidal fieldwork is at low tide, and this gives you the best chance of seeing what's exposed, the most amount of time to do something about it before the waters return and cover it again. By some quirk of the universe, the absolute best low tides at Sandwich Flats always coincide with dawn, and usually around February or March, which is winter time, and it means you're not guaranteed to get ideal fieldwork weather at all. However, we have been very lucky to develop a group of volunteers who are as enthusiastic to solve the mysteries of Sandwich Flats, no matter what the weather or the ridiculous time that they have to get up to start work. As we have such an international audience for our COVID talks, I thought I should make sure that everyone knows which part of the world we're talking about. So we're on the southeast coast of the UK, and Sandwich is located on the east coast of Kent. And if we weren't being diligent archaeologists with our eyes on the ground, we could probably see France on a clear day. So we work on Sandwich Flats, which is a stretch of mostly sandy beach within Sandwich Bay. It's 5 miles running north to south, and extremely low tide. You can walk out about a mile without even getting your feet wet. The very large tidal range during the springs on this relatively flat beach gives us plenty of time to do our archaeological investigations, which is why we like going back there so often. So it all started in 2018 when I was looking for an intertidal site that would be appropriate for training NAS members in survey methods and was located in the southeastern part of the UK. Through a series of fortunate circumstances, my friend and colleague from MSDS Marine, Sally Evans, alerted me to the potential of this area for archaeological sites for community archaeology. So in October 2018, we staged a joint NAS MSDS Marine fieldwork and training trip. Luckily, other people agreed that it was an intriguing place to work at dawn, and so a mixture of local people and out-of-towners, NAS members and non-members, retired people and homeschooled kids and uni students descended on Sandwich Flats for 5 days. Not only did we take them out on the flats and teach them the traditional tape measure survey techniques that you can see here, we also gave them the opportunity to see drone work in action. As it's such a large beach, it's important to have that overarching perspective from the sky to make sense of the site. And it helps that we have a volunteer with a drone and a license to use it, who is happy to bring it along for free, and also doesn't mind the volunteers having a go with his kit under supervision, of course. So here's 2 of our volunteers learning how it works. We also provided further archaeological training in the afternoons, as well as indoctrinating them in the ways of archaeological paperwork, which of course is very important. I have a very portable fake shipwreck that travels with me everywhere and is very handy for teaching 2D survey techniques in a nice, safe environment without the stress of worrying when the tide is coming back in. And part of this learning process is getting people to work in teams, particularly with people they've never worked with before. So the 2 red-headed children are from the same family, but everyone else there has never met before. Thankfully, they worked really well together to draw up their measurements and to create a site plan. So you can see in the bottom photo shows the teams assembling their different sections of the shipwreck plan. We were really relieved when the different sections actually fit together. We also ran total station lectures and workshops in the afternoon, courtesy of our volunteer John Hemingway, who is a surveyor and generously brings his expensive kit and is willing to share his extensive knowledge with us. Of course, you can't do archaeology these days without involving photogrammetry. So we ran a series of workshops showing people how to create 3D models of archaeological artifacts and sites. But sometimes when teaching kids, it's best to get a little creative. So one of our kids was very happy, surprisingly, to lie still and then be turned into a 3D model. He quite enjoyed that. And you can see that there was a real sense of teamwork created as we worked together over 5 days, working and living together. And pizza dinners are very conducive to good teamwork. So here's a little promotional video that our engagement officer put together to summarise what has been done so far and to entice others to come to our next Sandwich visit.
Being a complete newbie with archaeology, it's been wonderful just to get an insight into what archaeology is all about, especially when it's to do with the marine environment.
Investigating the wrecks on the Sandwich foreshore has been Amazing. I didn't know they were here.
I've learned to observe, look, and actually find an interest in any little thing that might be on that beach. I've started to look at the beach in a completely different way.
I can honestly say this is really deep, mind-blowing. It's been a really enriching week. Thank you so much.
So we had such a great time in October 2018 that we decided to be brave and return in February 2019 to see if the winter storms would reveal more on the beach for us. So we returned with a mix of old and new volunteer crew and a mixture of different bits of kit to help us record our discoveries. It's always good to have a bit of on-site training, so our volunteer, John Hemingway, returned with his total station, and this time we were joined by Southampton University PhD candidate and NAS tutor, Jack Pink, who brought us his university's very fancy RTK GPS. This allowed us to easily and accurately record where all of our archaeological sites were in relation to the rest of the world, and also teach our volunteers new skills with new kit. But of course, I'm a bit of a hard taskmaster and I like to make the most of every opportunity. So after we returned to base camp from our morning's field work, cleaned up a bit, wrote up our site reports, more training took place. So here are a group of volunteers learning 2D survey techniques on my handy portable shipwreck, making the most of the very unseasonable February sunshine. I actually got sunburnt on that occasion. So not only did we take the opportunity to train people in 2D survey, we also trained the trainers. So you can see the bearded gentleman loitering in the back. That's Nick Reed. He's our NAS tutor, and he'd just been training these people how to do their site plan, and they're very pleased with the finished result. We also held lectures, fairly informal ones, around the coffee table on how the RTK works, the GIS mapping, photogrammetry, and all sorts of other useful archaeological skills. There really was never a dull moment. And you can see that we've developed a bit of a tradition with our pointing teamwork photo, and it's clear that we always make sure that our volunteers have fun. So we had such good fun and good luck with the weather in February, we decided to return in September to see the effects of summer conditions on the sediment levels and to guarantee some nicer weather to work in, so we thought. The nice low tides fortuitously coincided with a weekend in late September, so we thought our odds were pretty good. Once again, a team of old and new volunteers assembled at dawn to see what would be revealed on the beach. We spent the Saturday morning recording the sites we'd already discovered in the past, and also recording various movable artifacts that had washed up on the latest tide. But on the second day, we weren't so lucky.
So it's dawn on Sunday, the 29th of September. We're doing a survey at Sandwich Flats. Normally it's a lovely, glorious sunrise, but not today. But yet we're still out here doing a fieldwork survey, trying to find evidence of shipwrecks. Despite the fact that there's stinging rain on my face, we're walking south, so I can't wait to walk back north again, then it won't hurt so much. This is archaeology in reality for you.
Thankfully, our volunteers were not deterred by the conditions. They were just as keen to get out and investigate because by the third visit to Sandwich, something had happened. Some of our volunteers had developed such great fieldwork skills that they'd become the teachers. So here you can see Christian Dalton. He'd come to all of the Sandwich fieldwork, and in that time, he'd become quite a pro at photogrammetry, as you can see from all of the computers around him. So now he's confident enough to teach the other volunteers that come along how to create the 3D models of some of the features we discovered on the beach. The big change for our September stint was that not only did we have Sally from MSDS join us, but we were joined by Lara and Lawrence from the East Kent Coast branch of the Coastal and Intertidal Zone Archaeology Network, hereafter called Citizen. It was really great to work with colleagues with different contacts and also different interests, all on the same beach. So that's right. We decided to do it again in February this year with the full knowledge that we couldn't possibly have 2 Februaries in a row that were such good weather, and I was right. We decided to stage a short three-day Citizen and NAS trip to collect some data to inform our longer joint trip in March when the tides were even lower. And thanks very much to Lara for taking this lovely photo at dawn of our small little team. And everything had changed in February, but even returning a month later in March, things had changed again. The sediment levels had really revealed more to what we could see on our shipwreck sites on our early morning field work. So why was it important that all of these changes? Well, we had to record our regular sites. see how they'd changed. And there's always intriguing isolated finds to record. Interesting to see what's thrown up by the beach. And there's also lots of photogrammetry models to process. And you can see that Christian really relishes watching the green bars as the photogrammetry models are created. And this time, we also arranged to visit the Deal Maritime Museum and Archives to see what was useful in their collection. And we found a lot of really cool stuff, some interesting maps, photographs, and we're still trying to work our way through all of that and see what it means for our sites. So we decided it was time to share our discoveries with the locals, and fortunately, a nice low tide coincided with a civilized time on a Saturday morning. So we advertised free guided beach walks to anyone interested, and despite the grey and unpleasant morning, 60 locals were keen enough to listen to us show them around their beach and interpret the archaeology that they regularly walk past. So I guess you probably want to know what everyone found so intriguing about Sandwich Flats. What have we actually found? Well, we found the remains of 10 wooden ships, mostly sunk upright with their bows inshore, which suggests that they were beached and then abandoned as opposed to actually being wrecked in a disastrous event. And then there's one plane wreck that we've got good records for when it crashed in the Second World War. We've also found a lot of individual finds from large chunks of worked timber. One was 10 meters long. And we've got metal barrels, glass bottle fragments, unexploded ordnance. That was fun when the bomb squad came to deal with that. Copper fragments and a lovely clay pipe. All of these artifacts, we've recorded their measurements and their location, and sometimes we've even tracked how they've moved from day to day, but we've always left them in situ, except for the clay pipe, copper fragments, and a pottery mug, which all have research potential. So these are currently in conservation at NAS headquarters, awaiting the chance for us to get back and investigate them further. So I'll just pick out a few of the highlights of our ship remains and artifacts to give you a better idea of what keeps our volunteers coming back for more. So SB007 is the code that we've given the remains of this wooden vessel, as it was the 7th archaeological find we made at Sandwich Bay. Very logical. This is the one that has a name, and that name has only been bestowed on it recently. It was first discovered during our fieldwork in 2018 by the 2 local kids that you saw before, who were very pleased when we started referring to the vessel by their names, the Emma Aden. When they found it, you could only see a few scant remains above the sediment. The bow is in the foreground, pointing inland, and a few frames, and then the stern is in the distance. At 28 meters in length, it's the largest vessel we've discovered on the beach. And the kids did a marvelous job of measuring it in 2D and creating a site plan with only a little assistance from their mum. But you can see from this photo, 2 years later, at our open day in March, the full outline is now visible. So of course, we blitzed it with photogrammetry and RTK recording in case we never see it again. Because that's what happens with the sediment changing all the time. That's the nature of Sandwich Flats, always changing and keeping us on our toes. So SB0014 is, you guessed it, it's the 14th archaeological find that we found at Sandwich Bay. It's possibly the only actual shipwreck on the beach, and that's because it's the only one that isn't upright. In this image, you're looking at the bow in the foreground with the stern in the distance and the keel on the left. So basically that's the port side that's been preserved in the sediment. And you can see Jack Pink is recording it with his RTK there. In this view that's coming up, you can see that we're looking at it from the port aft quarter, or the back left-hand side in landlubber speak. The red line highlights the keel, the red line highlights the stern post, which indicates the mid-upright orientation of the vessel. So you can see that it's wrecked on its port or left side. Due to the way that this vessel wrecked and collapsed on the beach, it's preserved some key features of construction, which will eventually help us narrow down what type of vessel it was. But whether we'll ever find out the name of the vessel is up for conjecture. So we've never actually taken a drone over this site, but we've achieved this overhead view from a still shot from the photogrammetry model, which was completed by Christian, our photogrammetry expert. The keel is at the bottom of the photo, bow to the right, stern to the left, and you can see that it's really only quite small. It's only 10 meters left remaining. It would have been slightly larger when intact. Now, the next vessel I want to talk to you about is SB0012. I think it's probably my personal favourite, despite the fact that it requires the most amount of walking to get there. It's quite almost at the top of the beach. It's a lovely wooden vessel with bow facing inshore, and the current remains are 19 metres long. It's quite far inshore, so it's exposed for a really long time at low tide. And it's got some really interesting construction features, such as this horizontal double external planks just at the stem and the stern. And you can see here, they're so beautifully preserved. Considering the excellent condition of the remaining wood and the long tidal exposure time, I reckon we could learn a lot from this vessel by excavating it. So at some point in the future, when we get the appropriate permits and funding, let me know if anyone's interested. Now, moving away from all of the wooden vessels, we've got one single plane wreck, which is quite well known locally, and it's an excellent reference point for all of the other wooden remains. You can use it as navigation. So it's a B-17 bomber that was part of the 303 bombs group and the 427th Bomb Squad, and it was ditched on the 1st of December 1943. It was just ran out of fuel on the way back from the Netherlands, and thankfully everyone survived. Pieces are regularly falling off the plane as it disintegrates through the effects of tide and time, but through the efforts of a particular local, most of the pieces are conserved and then donated to the local museum at Manston. Now, one of our most intriguing isolated finds we've made this was initially discovered in February this year just at the end of our fieldwork. It's always the way you find it, just at the end. It was a composite wood and concreted object of 3.2 meters long, so quite large. It was very chunky, and of course the tide was coming in, so we had no chance to deal with it properly and expose all of it. But through a clever combination of a bit of brushing and probing, here's what we think it is. Can you tell? It's a rudder. Here it is in an orientation that makes probably a little bit more sense. So it was an incredibly exciting discovery that such a large and heavy item could have washed up on the beach. There's also a lot of research potential to try and find out what vessel this came from and where the rest of it might be. One of our most recent finds is this large fragment of Westerwald mug. This type of salt glazed pottery has been made in a particular region of Germany from the 15th century right up until the present day. So we'll have to try and analyze the changes of design in the cobalt blue design to work out how old this is and why it's here. So because it's so interesting, we retrieved it, we've reported to the receiver of rec, and it's now being desalinated in our office. We've also found hundreds and hundreds of wooden posts. These posts were by far the most intriguing find on the beach. There were just so many of them. And sometimes when you're on a beach, you can kind of squint and see that they're in straight lines, but it was really hard to get a perspective of their overall layout and therefore what they might be. But they are much easier to spot at dawn. And that's when the light glances off the water and pools around them. So another reason to get up so early. But it all started to make a lot more sense when we finally got a GIS map of them all geolocated. It was created from our measurements, and you can see that there are some patterns emerging. There's some definite diagonal lines there. So far, there have been suggestions that these wooden stakes are glider defences from the war, or perhaps ancient trackways. However, the most likely option is fish traps. We'll have to do further dendrochronology and C4 testing to know more about their age and wood type, so that's in the future. And this is the most up-to-date geolocated data for our beach discoveries, only sent to me by Lara from Citizen yesterday, so hot off the press. You can clearly see the patterns of stakes in the beach in these images. And here's what it looks like when we put all the wooden ship remains and the stakes together, although it doesn't include our isolated finds as they don't stay put for very long. So over our multiple fieldwork trips to Sandwich Flats, we've developed a really good working partnership between NAS, MSDS and Citizen. And this has resulted in Citizen focusing their efforts on the wooden stakes. So they've claimed those. And that just leaves us with the wooden remains and the isolated finds. So there's no fighting. We just get on with our own archaeology and everyone works well together. Works really good well. And while this map of geolocated sites is incredibly useful and everyone has a laminated version to take out with them on site, one of our volunteers has gone even better. Our regular Sandwich volunteer, Paul Harwood, is an IT guru. And one night, he just decided to knock up this website for us that provides all the geolocated points and wrecks that we've recorded. And it works in real time, so you can use it while you're out on the beach. This is really handy when you're working on the beach because the sands are so dynamic that the sites look different every time you visit. And I will admit that sometimes the wooden boat remains do tend to kind of look like each other after a while. So the boat remains are in red and the stakes are in yellow, but you can see there's other blue marks on the beach, and that's the historic environment records, which have proved some of them have wrecks associated with them and some of them are just lost records. But these might be where some of our isolated finds are coming from, so there's more mysteries to be solved. One of the amazing things that's happened at Sandwich is that the volunteers have really taken ownership and gone off on their own tangents, which is what NAS fieldwork and training is all about. So apart from the geolocated maps of sites, Paul has been using the GIS data for the wooden stakes to do statistical analysis of their layout, which will certainly help with future analysis and possibly even contribute to our understanding of how the water levels have changed over time due to climate change. We've also had volunteers compile a list of vessels that were lost in the area, and that might be a list of potential candidates for our ship remains. So we've got to correlate them and see what happens there. And it's really great that the locals are getting more involved with investigating their own intertidal archaeology. The regular beach walkers are very keen to show off their finds on the Thanet and Sandwich Coastal Finds group page, and that's on Facebook. And then they ask the Facebook world for their expert opinion on what they found. It's been really great to connect with them at the open day in March, and hopefully that means we'll get more involved with them when we return again, whenever that is. So here is the first of two locals that are extremely active on Sandwich Flats. Tony Ovington is a local councillor and he's very keen to improve the maritime heritage situation along the whole East Kent coast. He's very good at finding amazing things on the beach and always reports and conserves them and then sends them off to the right museum. The other person is Ian Goodman, and he's the gentleman behind the bar. It's his microbrewery that we're in. So he was the discoverer of the fantastic intact flagon the day before we arrived in February this year, and that's just such an amazing discovery to make on the beach. And seeing as he came and chatted to us on the beach, we thought it only polite that we return the favour and go and visit him at his workplace and ooh and ah over all of his collection that covers over every surface of his establishment. You know, sometimes it's a bit tough being a community archaeologist, the places you have to go to do research. And it's not an uncommon experience to have people coming and chatting to us on Sandwich Flats when we're out there looking official in our high-vis vests. Lots of the locals come and chat to us and tell us stories. Some of them are a little confusing, the stories. So one of our aims is to try and engage with the locals in many and varied ways and try and collect their stories and then filter out the truth from some of the tall tales. So what have we achieved so far? Well, 5 fieldwork sessions, 18 days in the field, 50 volunteers and archaeologists involved, some from international locations, 75 archaeological site logs written, because everyone has to complete one of those after they've been in the field during the day, 10 photogrammetry models created, 10 unidentified wooden ship remains found, 1 plane, 20 loose finds recorded, hundreds of wooden stakes found, and 60 locals given a tour. This is all fantastic, but I think our biggest achievement so far is to create a team of volunteers that have brought their own skills to the project or developed skills during the field work and are now transmitting this information to other volunteers. And these team members are now developing their own tangents of research at Sandwich Flats. The aim in the not too distant future is for the regular volunteers to run the field work rather than me, and then I might just be able to go and have some fun doing archaeology on the beach. And while it's great to have this almost independent team of trained volunteers, very few of them are actually local. So they can't be the rapid response team that would be fantastic to have in this area, particularly with all the crazy weather we're having, that reveals the most amazing isolated finds and exposes the shipwreck remains at a moment's notice. So what are the mysteries that still need to be solved? Well, we still don't know a date or a name for any of the 10 shipwrecks that we found on the beach. And of course, that's the first thing that people ask when you're talking to them on the beach. So we have to find that out. We've also got lots of lost records, and we're hoping to find more details in the archives. And now we just have to try and match the archaeology to the historical records and see if anything sticks. Also, what on earth is going on with all of the wooden stakes? We're pretty sure they're fish traps, but there's still a lot of research to be done on these lines of posts. We'd also like to get a better understanding of the changing sediment levels. In the 3 years that I've been visiting Sandwich Flats, I've seen the beach change drastically to become overall a lot more flat. It's important for us to understand how these sediments change, firstly so we know when to access our archaeological sites, but also to understand the broader impact of climate change in the area. You can see just with this one shipwreck the different levels of sand and therefore how accessible it is for us to work on. Now, apart from the mysteries to be solved, there's opportunities to be realised in the form of training. It's a perfect location for training people in all sorts of archaeological techniques, which is why Citizen and NAS are going to go back again whenever we're allowed out. And when we return, perhaps in September, Here are some of the things that you can get up to if you want to come out with us. So we'll be doing walkover surveys. There's always new things to find. 2D measured tape survey, nothing wrong with going back to basics. GPS surveys of wreck sites, fish traps and individual finds. Wreck conservation assessments. Citizen training will be taking place. Photogrammetry recording is essential. Beach level monitoring, something we really want to focus on. Site recorder practice will be fantastic to do there. The use of the Citizen app to record the coastal features. There's not everything on the app yet. We'll be doing more archival research, collecting local stories, and pretty much anything else we can think of for training. So if you're interested in being part of the volunteer team at Sandwich Flats, send us an email and we'll let you know if our sandwich fieldwork goes ahead. Otherwise, there's always next year. We'd love to give you the opportunity at some point in the future to help us investigate the intriguing archaeology of Sandwich Flats. And for something entirely different, I hope you'll be listening next week when Simon Brown tells us the intriguing story of UB 116. I'll certainly be there. Thanks very much.